Okay, I love being first. I'll get it over and done with. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. I really appreciate it, and I hope that whatever I can say will help you in some sort of way. And really, if you want to come and speak to me when all this is over, I'll be hanging around and I'll be happy to meet you. I'm in the hospitality business. I was going to say, I'll just give a little background about myself. I wish I could tell you that I have this beautiful story about how my family was in the food business and how I got into the food business. The truth is that my mother, God bless her, who's 96 and as healthy as can be, was the worst cook in the world. And at about 10 or 12, I decided that I would try to teach myself how to cook. And I remember instead of having the lamb roast, which I don't know if any of you are as old as me, but Mum used to put it on in the fry pan at about 8 o'clock in the morning, and we'd eat it at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It was grey and it'd just fall off the bone. So she still cooks it like that, don't worry. I bought the Women's Weekly, I decided I'd make chicken and apricots. Tinned apricots, of course. So I served it up for Sunday lunch, and I do recall, and we still laugh about it, and my dad isn't here any longer, but he did make it to 103, so my mother's cooking didn't kill him, that's for sure. He said, what the bloody hell are you doing serving tinned apricots? They go in the jelly. That was my first effort into food and cuisine. I kept the love going, always. I read as much as I could. Wasn't a lot to read in those days, but I ended up, instead of going to Stotts Business College, which was where my dad wanted to send me, I did tell him that I wanted to be an interior decorator because I'd read about that, but he didn't understand that, which, of course, why should he? I ended up working in the local milk bar, the closest thing I could get to food. When I was 15, I started work. And by the time I was 28, I owned 4 little food businesses. So I, mostly in those days, I would probably call those food businesses delicatessens. These days, they would probably come along with you. We used to produce food that you could take home and pretend that you made it. When you had a dinner party, that's what we used to have. Once I got to about 28, 29, I decided that I'd probably like to go overseas and see if I could learn some more. So what I did for the next quite a long period of time is I used to save my money and travel overseas. I'd come back with a concept. I'd sell the concept to somebody and I'd spend the next 6 months setting up their business. So I presume I became a consultant without even knowing I'd become a consultant. Then something really changed my life that happened in Melbourne. The Grand Hyatt opened. It was called the Grand Hyatt, or it was called the Hyatt on Collins in those days. I believe it was I think it was 1986. Not sure, but it wasn't yesterday. And I wanted to work there. So I applied for a job as the banquet sales manager. I don't know if you remember the Hyatt on Collins in those days. The only competition it really had was the Southern Cross. So it was an enormous job. I was good at talking, and I talked this young gentleman who was the food and beverage director into giving me the job without any experience. That was Kevin Donovan. He's never gotten rid of me yet. And he and I have been working together for many years ever since, and we work together beautifully. We've never had an argument. We're good at different things, so we're very good at in business together. We then left the Hyatt Corporation, I'd learned a whole lot of things from corporate life. Left the Hyatt and we opened a restaurant called Shinwa in South Yarra, if anybody can remember that, and in the heyday of the 80s. And of course we had to learn how to have things like rent, power, debt. Never had any of those in a P&L in the Hyatt. It wasn't even included. So we made a lot of mistakes. We had a lot to learn. And when by chance the lease passed us in front of our faces for Donovan's down on the beach in St Kilda, we saw it as a chance that we couldn't ever miss. We've always loved it. We thought it needed love and attention. And in actual fact, our house was built, we live in Middle Park, our house was finished in the same week as the restaurant was finished, weirdly enough. So Donovan's was born. Donovan's is now 17 years old. We have 67 staff. We open 365 days a year because we don't want to give our customers a chance to go elsewhere. There's plenty of fantastic competition. We open on Christmas Day only for lunch. So we do close for Christmas dinner and we have about 20 people at home. And then we go back and open for Boxing Day. So we really believe that in a position that we're in, it's not a business that should ever be closed. It should always be open. So there's somebody there to clean it at 5:30 in the morning, every single day, 7 days a week. And the last supervisor probably leaves at about 2:30 at night. So we call her a girl. We've always referred to the business as a girl because she can be ornery sometimes, a little bit difficult. She's never left alone for very often. The concept that we had for Donovan's remains solid today as it was the day we opened it. We built it as a house. We wanted it to look like somebody's home. We wanted to welcome you to our home. We wanted to serve the food that we love to eat. We wanted to employ people that were friendly. And we still maintain this today that we would never employ a person with a lot of experience that's got attitude. I would prefer, if you ask somebody questions about the wine list, which is big, and they don't understand it, there'll be somebody on the floor that they can go and get and help. I just want them to be friendly. More important, because I maintain that I'm in the hospitality business. Our job is to be hospitable. So that's been our line, and it still is. We want our business to be personal. We put our name on the door. And strangely, people ask me all the time, oh, why don't you open another Donovan's? Well, we wouldn't. This one's big enough. It's absolutely big enough. And it needs us to be there. And it has our name on the door. So if Kevin and I open a second Donovan's somewhere else in Melbourne, I can tell you exactly what's going to happen. Someone's going to come into Donovan's in St Kilda and go, oh, well, the fish wasn't as good as it was. Well, that's because they've opened another restaurant. If I can keep that one perfect and maintain the client base that I've got now, we try to spoil our customers. So if we haven't seen anybody for a couple of months or a few weeks and they're regulars, we have a budget for glasses of champagne and bottles of champagne. So we don't give away bubbles, we give away French champagne. We have a budget for it. So if you're going to come back and we haven't seen you for a while, we're going to spoil you. And in return, what's always happened to us is that our customers spoil us back by coming back to us. So it's just been an investment. And the house changes its face every 6 months. So every 6 months, when it's summer and winter, I pull everything out of there and redecorate the whole place. So it goes into a summer uniform and a winter uniform. I redecorate the bathrooms, change the uniforms. It takes about 5 days to do. So I do it overnight, go in at 2:30 with 3 of my other staff, out by 11 so we can open again because we never shut, you have to remember, and it changes its face. So we invest money in doing that because the reality is for Donovan's, it's been pushing forwards for 17 years. We've spent money doing that and we have never spent a cent on advertising. So that's our own form of internal advertising, if you like, which really works for us. If we can make sure that everybody leaves our building that might have had something go wrong, that we fix it and they leave it and love it. We never want anybody to leave that doesn't love it. It happens, but our philosophy is to try to be sure that if anything goes wrong, we've actually looked after them. I've lost my place now. Oh, here we go, I've got it. Okay. We try to look at our staff, all 67 of them, as our family. Kevin and I don't have children, and we say that we've got 2 dogs that you couldn't buy anything else for. So, and half our staff want to be our dogs. So, that having been said, you can't run a family like that without really stringent rules. So we have very stringent training and we have very stringent appraisal systems that happen frequently. And an appraisal to us is a chance to sit down with somebody, and it's also for them to appraise whether they actually feel comfortable working for us, whether they're learning what they want to learn. I think an appraisal is a chance for everybody to talk about whether they're happy or whether you're happy. I mean, if we're not, we have to work out why and move on. So And also if somebody's done something wrong on a night, we never let it go. If something's happened, we never interrupt it during service, but we sit down on the night, talk to the person about what happened, work out how it happened, and find a way to make it never happen again. So we're pretty strict because we have to be. I expect that, if you're on the floor at 7 o'clock, then you're at the back door of the restaurant for briefing, in your uniform, you've had your coffee, and you're ready to go. So if you want to come 10 minutes late, 3 days in a row, we will give you a written warning because it's that big that we do need to be fairly strict. That's how we maintain the standards, got to be maintained. So happy, friendly, but you have to be good about what you're doing. The way that we try to make our business move forwards is that we never stop learning, never, and we never stop changing it. So we change things all the time. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Our philosophy is, and we truly believe it, that we've never actually got it right. Because I think the day that we think we've got our business right, we may as well shut it. We need to keep moving forwards and trying to make it better. There's masses of competition out there. Compared to where we started in this business years ago, to where it is now, I think Melbourne's one of the best food cities in the world. I truly believe that. The choices that we have, the creativity that's out there, the youth that's coming through our business is fantastic. So we need to be ahead of ourselves. So I say that I'm wrapping it up, okay. I say that, can I talk? We have a business where we bring in raw material, we manufacture it, and we sell it all on one spot. It's fraught with danger, so you've always got to be on top of your business. We produce 75 menu items a day. The only thing that we buy in is the bread that somebody makes specifically for us and the brown paper bag dried pasta from Italy. Everything else we make. And we maintain that. We have 22 cooks. So, and I think that interesting in closing, food has become the rock star. There's more PR about food than there ever was in the whole world. But where our challenge is going to be is that young people aren't coming into our business. They want to watch it on television, but they don't want to do the work. So we've got to work with our colleges, and we're really going to have to mentor to produce enough quality people to keep our businesses growing. I think that's our big challenge. And my only advice to you guys is if you're in business, one thing I know is the only way to run a good business is to make sure you're not in it all the time. You need to rest, you need to recuperate, you need to do other things. And I was talking to some people the other day and I said, well, I take obedience classes, that's how I relax. What I didn't tell them is, I might need obedience myself because I haven't stopped talking yet. I go to obedience class for my dogs. That's my relaxation. So I'm wrapping it up. I've been 47 years in the hospitality business. My plan is to be in it for another 47 years. And I can only hope that all of you, whatever you're doing, can get an opportunity to work in a business like I do because I love it. That's it.
So Miriam is the managing partner and major shareholder of Collins Consulting Group. She has over 28 years' experience in human capital and management consulting. She works with leadership teams in reviewing, determining and executing a variety of strategic human capital initiatives. She's worked with companies like Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, Deutsche Bank and Westpac, just to name a few. They're not bad little businesses to work with, are they? If you could please welcome Sharon.
Can you hear me?
And if we could turn Sharon on, that would be great. Now, have you ever had that said to you before?
Yeah, but not in public.
So, Sharon, if you could give us a snapshot of your career in the financial service industries,
Sure.
And how your industry has embraced women in the workforce.
Of course. I'll give you a little bit of background on myself, but I'm sure you'd be interested in understanding or getting a bit of a feel for what some of the financial institutions are doing today in relation to getting more women into the workforce, because it's a real issue. But as Senator Asher had mentioned before, it's definitely on their agenda, and they're doing some positive things around bringing more women at the junior, at middle, and more senior levels into their organisations. A little bit of background on myself. Educated in Melbourne, and started off my career as an accountant, which was very exciting, numbers and computers. I think I decided after 2 years in working for a logistics company in accounting that I needed to do something else. So I went along to a recruitment consultant who happened to be working in financial services. And he started talking to me about things like merchant banking, mutual funds and finance companies. And I thought, this is the end of the conversation, because I had no idea what he was referring to at the time. Anyway, he happened to offer me a job as a consultant. And I certainly cut my teeth in learning about recruitment and, to some extent, the financial services sector. 2 years into that role, I was running the Melbourne branch for them, and then I was approached by Collins Consulting to join them and help them to establish their financial services, or a part of their financial services practice. And that was really good fun. I think during that time, whilst recruitment is interesting, what I really enjoyed was learning about financial services, business, and people. Getting an understanding as to what makes people tick, what's important to them, etc. I think the other thing that I learnt from Collins was really about learning to consult, to actually listen, work with clients, and really get an understanding of what their issues were. Because often what they thought that were their issues weren't necessarily, they were only a component of it. There were a number of other things that were impacting on their business at that time. So I joined Collins, and then this is in Melbourne. We sort of built the practice up over a 2-year period, and then of course I moved to Sydney because there was a lot of activity amongst the banks, and clearly a number of those institutions had head offices in Sydney. Collins at its peak had about 18 staff over three sites. We were in Melbourne, Sydney and Hong Kong. We also established back in sort of 99-2000 a internet-based business that actually had about 30 people in that business. I hate to say that it wasn't as successful as we would have liked, but I can talk about that later if it's something that's of interest to people. There were a number of issues, but I think one of the things that I learnt from that was, don't spread yourself too thinly across things that you're doing, and make sure that you've got the right support in terms of being able to execute the strategy. With respect to, I think, let's talk a little bit about what we're seeing in financial services, and what some of the issues are that the banks face in being able to recruit and retain, to some extent, women. I'm sure you all have an understanding of some of the challenges that you face in wanting to continue to work in a corporate role. The banks are struggling in many ways, not only to retain senior women, but even to recruit them at the junior ranks, at the graduate level. And I think there's in part a stigma associated with working for a financial institution, in the sense that it really hasn't catered to allowing women to work flexible hours, and if the organisation does have those policies in place, many women struggle with the whole concept of actually taking on those flexible hours, because they feel that their career will be hamstrung because they're not doing what the guys are doing in terms of 12-hour days, etc., etc. I think that there are also some challenges around the culture of these institutions. We talk about unconscious bias, And I think that's very, very real. HR departments are now putting training programs in place to actually help, and to some extent just create awareness amongst the guys that, you know, sitting around the table talking about football, or, you know, going down the pub and taking the guys down for a drink and excluding women in an unconscious way is not positive. So there's a large education program going on by a number of the HR departments around unconscious bias. I think it's fair to say that the organisations that I see that do really, really well at or are working towards getting more women into the workplace are ones whereby it's been driven at the leadership level. So CEOs, boards are really, really keen to ensure that they've got the right programs in place. They're making their line managers accountable for ensuring that they are considering women for senior roles, ensuring that women are part of a process when they're looking to recruit into senior roles, and actively look to where they can even employ women from other industries or from their competitors. And again, whilst we're in a market at the moment where clearly the economy is tight and there's not a lot of hiring going on, when I talk to them, if they're going to look to hire, they'll generally say, I'll have better chance of getting a woman employed during this difficult time than hiring anybody to replace the role. So I think that there is certainly a lot of challenges. I think that there's no one answer to this. In talking to these CEOs, I think that they realise that it's an investment, and it's probably an investment that might take 10 years before we actually start to see a better gender balance within a lot of these organisations. But I think for the first time in a long time, we're seeing a genuine commitment, and that commitment is being shown by making people accountable. And making these CEOs and people in these leadership roles accountable for employing more women in the workplace.
Thank you very much. And our third speaker is Miriam Silva. And Miriam is the General Manager of Commercial Operations at Elders. She's responsible across Elders Limited business on a national level. She's got more than 20 years' experience in multiple industries, including banking and agribusiness, managing large and geographically diverse teams. Miriam, as you can imagine, working at Elders, works in a very male-dominated world and has been referred to as the woman who breaks down the barriers. Large mantle to carry, isn't it? So Miriam, you're quite unique. And not only are you a female working in such a male-dominated industry, but you are a female working in a male-dominated industry. It's very blokey, Elders. Yes. Very blokey. Can you share your challenges and journey that you faced through your career?
Yes, I can. Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes. Yeah, we're good. Okay, so just to give you a little bit of background on myself, we came to Australia when I was 6 years old, when my dad got a job in Adelaide, of all places, and I was born in, anyone want to guess? Anyway, London, England. So London, England. So for anyone that tells me I speak English very well, it's really difficult to take as a compliment because that's kind of all I know. So I grew up in Adelaide and ended up studying maths at university because I'm sure that's what you all wanted to do as well when you went to uni, is study maths, only because I liked it. Ended up in the pharmaceutical industry and had fantastic boss and mentor there, so managed to work through all different parts of the organisation, business development, research development, operations, all sorts of different areas, so had some fantastic experience. After 10 years in pharmaceuticals, we ended up in Melbourne. My husband's from Melbourne. He grew up in Hyatt, just around the corner. We live not too far from here, so it's nice to kind of be home, and Donovan's is one of our favourite restaurants. To say all of that. So we ended up back in Melbourne. We had about 11 years in Melbourne, and after 10 years in the pharmaceutical industry, ended up working with ANZ Bank. I had a lovely time. at the ANZ, and did a number of roles, everything from working in Hong Kong for a couple of years, running the bank, working in corporate institutional banking, working in retail banking, and my last role before I left ANZ was Chief Operating Officer for the Pacific. So I had people all over the world working in all sorts of different countries, whether it's East Timor or Papua New Guinea or Fiji or the Cook Islands or any of those beautiful Pacific islands that you've ever dreamt about. They're more beautiful than you could ever imagine, and just a fantastic learning experience in terms of meeting other cultures and meeting different people. After 9 years with ANZ, I had a phone call one day saying it was a great job going back in Adelaide at Elders. I didn't really know too much about Elders. Adelaide's home for us, or home for me anyway. It's where my parents are, so I thought, great opportunity, go back home. Had looked at the board papers, done everything else, thought this looks like a great opportunity. Agriculture, everyone needs to eat. Food's important, so therefore this can't be such a bad thing, and off we trotted back to Adelaide. One of the really good things about going back to Adelaide from Melbourne is we didn't have that drive down the southeastern freeway into town every day. Saved a lot on CityLink tolls. And my first day at Elders kind of went a little bit like this. So I turned up to park the car, had my pink shirt on, and found my office, and one of the guys said, "Oh, Miriam, we moved out of the big office and we gave you the big office." And I thought, oh, that's a little odd. I came from ANZ, open plan, for any of you that may or may not have worked at ANZ, open plan, my desk was about this big. So I've gone from a desk to a large office. I thought that was very odd. And then I thought I can't be sitting in this office for a while, so I better wander around and say hello. So I thought I'd walk around and introduce. Isn't that what you do? You walk around and introduce yourself to people. So I walked around and I thought, oh, there's a lot of men around. And I kind of thought, well, I wonder where the women are. Maybe they just sit on another floor. At that point in time, there were about 700 people in head office in the building, and I just thought it was a little unusual. I didn't think too much about it. And then I went to my first exec meeting, and I thought, there's just something not right about this meeting. I'm not really sure what's not right, but what's not right? There was a lot of swearing going on. And then I thought, actually, I'm the only woman here. There's no other women. And you know, the unconscious bias that was mentioned, I guess when you're one of someone sitting in a room of other people where you're the only one and you may not think like everyone else, it's hard to then imagine what they might be thinking and how to be able to get your point across so that you can get to a good business outcome. 3.5 years on, I'm not always the only woman sitting in a meeting, and I have to point out my 3 lovely colleagues here from Elders sitting here. And the reason I want to point them out is because 2 of them are in wool, and poor Sam, who's only been with us for about 3 weeks now, she's a new wool trainee, so she's about to learn how to be wool auctioneer and so forth. They work down in Brooklyn there. Suzanne's been in the wool team now for a year and a half. Yeah, 2.5. Yeah, it's gone quickly. And Marilyn looks after all processes for the whole organisation and makes sure that everyone does things in a standard way. And Marilyn is just working part-time. She has every second Friday off, or every one a month or something. One a month. Close. So, I'm really happy to say that we've been able to attract not only younger women to the team to learn about an industry that's been around for a long time, but also other women who can see opportunities within the organisation. For those of you that may not know too much about Elders, Elders has been in Australia for 173 years with head office in Adelaide. South Australia is 175 years old, and Elders is 173 years old. So it's been, an Adelaide Australian icon as a stock and station agent for a very long time. And Elders does many things, but the core business is agriculture, and there's obviously some forestry and a bit of automotive thrown in there as well. Coming from banking, which is quite different, to agriculture, where, let me tell you, I don't know anything about sheep and cows other than they're quite tasty and the wool's fairly soft and so forth. To kind of work with a group of guys that go, but you don't know anything about sheep and cows, has been an interesting experience. So I get to do things like go to the ram sales. I'm going to Sheepvention. Any of you going to Sheepvention in Hamilton in 2 weeks? No, okay.
But I'd like to.
So I get to go to many different agricultural events all around Australia, which has been quite incredible. And unconscious bias is an amazing thing. You may have noticed I'm a Muslim. I know. Something gives it away. It's not my smile, they tell me. It might have something to do with the scarf that I wear on my head. And many places in Australia that I've been to, a lot of people will actually tell me that I'm the first Muslim person they've ever met in their life, which, again, I think is quite extraordinary. And earlier this year I was in Inverell talking at one of the Rotary conferences, so about 500 odd people, and as they were driving me back to Armidale, they actually said that they'd never met a Muslim person in their life. And so before I came, this is one of the most beautiful stories I've ever heard. Before I came, someone bought some books on Islam and donated them to the local library so that they could read about Islam and Muslims before I turned up. And I just thought that was the most extraordinarily beautiful thing that anyone would ever do, to learn about what's going on. So I get people... moving from Melbourne to Adelaide was one of the biggest shocks in one way. Melbourne has the most beautiful multicultural community, and really respectful of multiculturalism, really respectful of other cultures and other people, and no matter where you walk and no matter what you do, you get treated like a human being. Moving back to Adelaide was quite an extraordinary experience, because people speak very slowly, just in case you don't speak English. And it was a real shock to go back to a David Jones or to a Myers or to somewhere in the mall where people actually didn't want to serve you anymore. And this is, we've only been back in Adelaide 3.5 years, where people actually don't want to serve you because you wear a scarf on your head and you must be one of those people. So therefore we just will walk away and pretend you're not in the shop, or pretend you're not in the restaurant, or pretend you're not here, or do something else. And that was, let me tell you, that was actually quite a culture shock, even, especially coming from Melbourne, and where you just don't even think about it, or even in the Pacific where you don't even think about it, to going back to Adelaide. So kind of having that, and then having this entrenched culture in Elders as well, in terms of everything else. You kind of sit there and go, why am I still there 3.5 years later? And the only thing I can say, and the only advice I can give, which is the advice I give to myself, is just do your job, and do your job really well, because there are lots of people that said to me in my first little while, they're never going to last, never going to succeed here, never going to do anything. A lot of people said, you've got a lot to prove, and I kind of thought, I've got nothing to prove to anyone. I've got this job based on merit. I'm turning up here to do this job, so I better just do my job, and do my job really well, because that way I do my job and do my job really well, and whether people like me or not is irrelevant. It's just about the fact that I've done my job. And you can speak to the three of my team afterwards, but they'll certainly tell you I'm so proud of my team. and so proud of everything that they've done, and so proud of the leadership skills that they've built and how far they've come just by kind of maybe thinking a little bit differently, or having someone challenge them in a different way, or being open to a different way of thinking, or being open to a little bit of feedback, or being open to the fact that you're not doing your job as well as you could be, so these are some of the things you can do to improve it, or these are some of the things you do really well, so therefore how can we keep building on those. The other thing being back in Adelaide has really allowed me to do is get much more involved in the local community. And also somehow I seem to have picked up the mantle of, progressing women's issues. I'm not quite sure why, but somehow I seem to have done that. And so the three kind of other things, other than volunteering, so let's leave volunteering to one side, but the other things I do is I'm Deputy Chair of the Training and Skills Commission in South Australia, and that's just been a fabulous experience to get an insight into how government works, how state government works, why policy is important. I never really thought policy was that important, but there you go. Why policy is important, and why it's important to be part of that policy making to make things better for other people. So that's been fantastic. I'm also a member of the South Australian Multicultural and Ethnic Affairs Commission, which again has just been awesome because you get to go to citizenship ceremonies with mayors and local councillors and so forth, and learn about different local councils and be able to mix with the community and understand why people are becoming Australian citizens. And then the other one I've joined is the Premier's Council for Women, which again is again that kind of policy body for saying how do we make things better for women in the state. And just not having to drive for 45 minutes each way into town every day has allowed me to be more active within the community, and I feel it's one of those areas that I'm able to give back on. So I look back, the overwhelming feeling I have for my career and the people that have been supportive and everything I've learned is gratitude. I have nothing else other than gratitude for the wonderful people that I've met, for all the amazing things that I get to do, and for all the things that I get to learn every day. And yes, it's overwhelming of gratitude. Thank you. Thank you.
Right. Impressive, hey? I'm just getting a set of questions that we just prepared earlier. So, let me just ask each of you, how do you motivate yourself and stay motivated? Who wants to start off?
Oh, mine's easy. I love what I do. Really simple.
Love what you do?
Don't even need to try for me.
Yeah, love and be passionate about what you do.
Love it. For me, it's people.
People?
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay. If you had to start over from scratch, knowing what you know now, wouldn't that be good? What would you do differently?
I'm happy to have a go at that. In the first 10 years of my career, I'd say I was really focused on getting to the next level, and just really wanted to get ahead quite quickly. And my career for me didn't take off, until I stopped trying and just learned how to be myself. So that would be what I would do differently. I would learn to be myself maybe 10 years earlier than I did, and not try so hard.
Beautiful. What about describing one of your biggest failures? What lessons did you learn, and how did it contribute to a greater success? Don't these sound like interview questions? Sorry, it just came across my mind. Now tell me about a time.
I'll take that one if you want me to.
Go on, Gail.
It's not one thing, but I was born with this gene of hating being told what to do, and so it's true. And it took me a lot longer than most people to learn what an advantage it is to open your ears and your heart and listen to what other people's opinions are. You can learn a lot, and it took me a long time to learn that. It's a lesson very well learned. Mm-hmm. I still hate being told what to do. But if you can understand what I'm saying, I really, for a long time, I didn't stop and listen to really good advice, and I could have done things a lot easier if I had have.
Beautiful. Sharon, picking up on things that you said earlier, what can women do to successfully achieve and be appointed to senior roles?
Okay. Look, I think that there's a lot of conversation around women needing to be mentored within organisations. I think there's also something to be said for them being sponsored. So
what's the difference between
the
two?
Look, I think that in a sponsorship situation, whether that be your immediate manager or somebody that's senior, got a bit of profile within the organisation, that they will ensure that you are networking both internally and externally. So they will support you and take you along to important meetings. They will ensure that you're actually getting exposure to the right customers, and really be supportive of your endeavour to broaden your experience, your knowledge, and those networks. I think that mentoring is slightly different in the sense that again, somebody at the leadership level or senior within an organisation will support that person in terms of helping them with business issues, technical issues, etc. It's the sponsorship. It's actually making sure that people are getting exposed to the right areas within their organisation that I think is something that women don't tend to do or promote. They're often seen to be aggressive if they attempt to do that, but I think that women need to make sure that they are getting heard and that it's known that they want to build a career.
Beautiful. I really want to... I'm just trying to think of how all of you have so much in common, although you come from completely different areas of business. But I think there is so much that you have in common. I want to ask you to talk a bit about service and what's unique about the service that you provide. And so, how about each of you? Because we all provide service, whether we're in a consulting business or we're in a management or in hospitality.
Well, I guess we're in service. We seriously are in service. So I think it's probably a repetition of what I was saying to you before, is that as big as our business is, it's a big, small business, if you like, we are absolutely committed to making it as personal as we possibly can and being sure that we never underestimate every single person that comes into our business and is a customer. So I think that what we try to do is never take anybody for granted, and like I was trying to explain before, make sure you never leave without having a great time. And so our part of service is, yes, of course, somebody greets you at the door, sits you down, it's all lovely. I think that the best part of service is that somebody says goodnight to you at the front door when you go. It has to be a complete thing. That's what we try to do.
Beautiful.
I think that in terms of, in our industry is reasonably competitive. There's no doubt about that. There's sort of, no barriers to entry. I think that what has stood us well in test of time is really to, over-deliver. There is an expectation of what they will get, but we make a point of really ensuring that we just go that little bit extra in terms of, delivering an outcome to them. And I think just touching on your point before, Gail, too, it's also about, being being and having all of the right processes and training of your people in place to ensure that you're delivering a quality service or product to that clientele, and just being very rigid around how you deliver that service or product.
Beautiful, thank you. Miriam?
For us, elders, for those of you in small business, you'll relate to this, I would think. It's almost about sticking with the clients during the tough times, because when it doesn't rain, when their sheep die, when the cows die, when there's no wool, when they can't grow the crop, when they can't buy the fertiliser, when they can't buy the fencing because they don't have money because it hasn't rained and you can't buy the water to do it, you remember the organisation that actually stuck with you during that time, because quite often the banks won't, or the banks may not, for various reasons, but you still need, it's still your livelihood and it's still your income. So therefore it's about sticking with the clients that you can through those times that are difficult, knowing that when the times get better you can then actually then build on the relationship that you have, and also about remaining relevant to the new wave of innovation or new wave of things coming through for younger clients or younger people that come through. So it's that balance of the clients that you have a 170-year relationship with and those that you have a 5-minute relationship with, and being able to be relevant to both. And within agriculture that's quite no mean feat. But the one thing I do want to talk about is, from a personal perspective, service means quite a lot to me as a leader. So for me, my role as a leader is to serve my team, and that's the philosophy that I've personally had from a leadership perspective for many years now, that my role is to serve my team. So whether it's to listen, whether it's to provide feedback, whether it's to provide a strategy document or do whatever, for me it's actually a personal philosophy that I take with me with whatever I do.
Beautiful. I'm just looking at the time. I'm going to try and just put another question in for all three of you before I have to wrap up. Tell us what a typical day is like for each of you, because we're all trying to juggle all of these things in our world. Tell us what a typical day is like. Start with you, Miriam.
So my day is generally crazy. It's meetings from back-to-back meetings from probably 8 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night. It seriously is. It's one meeting after the other. Whether it's a one-on-one, whether it's a project meeting, whether it's an ops review, whether it's something with the CEO, whatever it is, it's just one after the other, after the other, after the other. And it can be on many and varied topics, and then you stick a few boards in here and there and you get something else. So it's just some kind of generally crazy diary.
Someone once said to me, what is it that I did? And I say, I meet.
You meet, yeah.
Just meet.
My husband says that to me. He says, what do you do all day?
Yeah.
Just sit in meetings all day.
Thank you. What about you, Sharon?
Well, I guess running a small business, and one of the joys of that is that you have some flexibility. So my morning generally starts with some exercise, whether that be yoga or with a personal trainer. I then need to get the 12-year-old off to school, so that can be challenging depending on how he's woken up and who has to do what. And then, look, I'm generally in the office, I'd like to say around 8:30, but these days, given the markets, it's probably more around 9. And, we spend a lot of time talking to clients. We spend a lot of time talking to people in the market who are inquisitive around, what the trends are, etc. Our business does quite a bit of research, so there's often, a lot of internal meetings with the staff around projects. And look, I try and get away from the office around sort of 5:30. With the view that, again, because of the nature of our work and dealing with people of at a confidential nature, that you might get on the phone at 8:30 at night. 8:30 at night to talk to people around particular assignments, etc., that we might be working on in the marketplace. So, I'd like to think that we can turn off the computer by, 9:30, 10 o'clock, which isn't too bad.
Wow, okay, thank you.
You
Gail.
think yours is crazy, wait till you hear mine. Well, every day is different, but I would say that there's two prongs to this one. So, I say that there's a rented house next door to us. When the tenants change, I go in and say, please don't be worried if you smell smoke at midnight. It's just us having a barbecue. Because our day starts later and finishes later. So ours is it's great to have your own business, and ours is very flexible. And I will tell you that I don't like sleeping. It's not something I like doing, so I'm not interested in it really. So I never have been. So I'm usually on the phone to the first person in the office just to check what's happened from last night, what's broken, because things break all the time. The air conditioner, the this, that. So that's fine. A bit of 7 o'clock normally. But what I don't do, and I'm into work by about 9:30. Usually make my calls at home between 9 and 9:30, because once I get into the restaurant, it seems to be like yours. It's like quicksand. You're in. The day just disappears. So, and I'm happy for that to happen. I love the day disappearing. But I'm usually back home by 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night. Kevin goes to golf a couple of days during the week. He works the nights, I work the days. So, but what we did do, because it's such a long and I meant to tell you this before, it's important for small business, I think, is that about 7 or 8 years ago, we are lucky to have 11 people that have been working with us for the 17 years that we've had Donovan's. And those people have grown with us, and they all have children, mortgages, more expenses to meet. And I don't know, but you have to do more to make somebody happy to be with you when you're working than to just pay them more. It doesn't always work like that. So, and we decided that, as much as we love our business, we also want to be away from it too. We want to be able to travel and not have to worry. So we've taken on those 11 people as our partners, so to speak. Not that they own part of the business, but we set targets with those 11 people. They all hold supervisory roles within the business. We set targets together about incomes, turnover, costs. We do it every 3 months because our business is changing all the time, so those targets need to change. If we hit those targets, we all make money. And that's changed our lives because Kevin and I think that, we have a nice house, a great business, the 2 dogs that you couldn't buy anything more for. We get to travel. We drive a couple of nice cars. How long can we keep this business alive and fresh unless we have people in it that take ownership for it? So that's very much a decision, a part of a lifestyle decision for us, but also the reason that Donovan's keeps growing, because it has youth in it that are responsible and they own part of that business. So that's been very important for us.
Mm-hmm. Lovely, thank you. Well,
sorry, it was long, I know. Sorry.
Gail did say that she could talk. And one of the great things is, not only can she talk, she's incredibly entertaining. You always learn something and you always have a laugh. So I thank you. So, look, I reckon we could go on forever and ever, but I need to wrap it up because these people, we have a commitment to them to get them out by 2 o'clock so they can go back to their office or whatever they do. So, thank you.
Thank
Gail,
you.
Thank you.
Sharon, Miriam, for sharing your lives with us today.
Thank you.